I'm going to be going over to England today and looking a bit at English medieval history and two very, very famous components to just English history, but world history as well, which are the year 1066 and the Magna Carta. 1066, a famous date, one of the most famous dates in all of history, and I'll explain why. You have two sides. You have the Anglo-Saxons, or the Saxons, who are the English, and then you have the Normans, who are French. The English leader, his name is King Harold, and the Norman leader, his name is going to be William the Conqueror, so he's the Norman dude. There we go. Okay, so they meet at a very famous battle called the Battle of Hastings, and during this battle, William's going to win, hence he gets the nickname, the Conqueror. And they meet in a place called Hastings, and William goes and defeats Harold, and is going to proceed to take over England very quickly. Now, some people go and they say, okay, this is just a battle, seems kind of random, what's the true importance? I kind of have to put it within a more modern perspective for you to understand why this would be so significant of, the French defeating the English, or the Normans defeating the Saxons and going and invading. Just a modern-day parallel, okay, it's not exactly the same, but think about if we had a country, let's say Canada, our neighbors to the north, if they went and actually conquered the U.S., would we not look back as Americans and see this as a significant date? Would we not go and see a mixture of our two cultures? Would we not see maybe the infusion of French language into America as well? So that's kind of something you can think about. Within a more modern day kind of perspective, you say, whoa, this actually could be very, very important to our history. So I have the awesome cartoon of Harold. He got shot in the eye with the arrow, famously, and he got chopped up to pieces, literally, which was not so good for him. What are the effects? The Normans go and take over England. The elites, everybody that's high up in society, was taken out. They either were killed or they left, and then they're replaced with Normans. The English themselves get the heck out of England. They just go and leave. And you also have kind of the end of the feudal system and the beginning of a strong monarchy, kind of the idea that you think about with the Middle Ages. Having a strong king is really going to start here with the Norman invasion. So this includes going and organizing society into shires, which is essentially a small geographical area which is ruled by a sheriff, like the Sheriff of Nottingham in the Robin Hood movie. There we go, that's what I was looking for. Once William the Conqueror goes and conquers England, in addition to that, he also makes the Domesday Book. The Domesday Book is like a greedy kid on Christmas morning counting how many presents they have. William the Conqueror is going to go and essentially take a census. And with this census, he's going and he's counting how many people live in England and, what their jobs are. He's counting his loot. In addition to that, another development is the position of Exchequer, which is an awesome word, but we don't really use it in America. It's an English word for like a treasurer. And the treasurer goes in, is basically a sheriff, but for the entire country. So the office of Exchequer is the equivalent to like the American Secretary of the Treasury, if you want to think about that, going and being in charge of the money. In addition, obviously, we have a lot of contact in culture and a lot of contact in terms of language and, just Normanness being infused into the country of England. Something else that is talking about our second subject here, this did not happen in 1066, is the development of Magna Carta and this incredibly important document to world history. So you have King John, and if you've seen Robin Hood, I'm just all over the Robin Hood references right now. If you've seen Robin Hood, King John is that dude. He's hanging out with the snake. He's the one he's in control of England while his brother Richard the Lionheart is fighting the Crusades. So if you can make that connection there. Now this is what King John really looked like down here below. He was forced to sign this document, and this document was called Magna Carta. Magna Carta essentially means Great Charter. Here's kind of the basic story behind Magna Carta. Is a bunch of the nobles, as you can see, standing around King John, forced him to sign this document, saying that they were, had certain rights, that the king had to meet with them regularly, which is the development of the English Parliament, the early origins of that, and established principles that are very important to today. So let me talk about each of these principles. The first one is the rule of law. And the rule of law is that the king, or anybody for that matter, is not above the law. The law is above anybody. So even if the president does something, basically the idea is president in a modern context, or a king back then, even if he does something, it could be illegal if the law says it's illegal. So nobody is above the law. Fairness of law means the laws need to be kind of relatively fair. And fair is kind of a philosophical question. What's fair? What's not fair? But that one's kind of self-explanatory, that the laws need to be fair in some form. And that's what the nobles were fighting for. In addition, there's the idea of due process. Due process is kind of a legal term. If you watch like Law and Order, something you might see. It's the idea that you have to go through certain processes if you are tried for a crime, something along those lines. That you might have to be read your rights if you have the right to remain silent, something like that. You have the right to a jury, those types of things. And then in addition to that, economic rights, that has to do with money. The idea that your property is yours, it's not the king's. So all of these principles come out of Magna Carta, a very important document that goes and forms the basis, basically, of Western constitutional law. And we'll see that in the U.S. Constitution as well.